Hey everyone, thanks for coming. Welcome to Venetian Room E, to the Virgin Media session. So yeah, I hope you all enjoyed Richard this afternoon. I'm losing track of time actually. In fact, I'm pretty excited about this session. I'm so excited I haven't actually slept in the last 24 hours. So it'll be interesting to see how this goes. I hope you've all had lunch. I loved Deborah Francis White's session yesterday, when she talked about be a lion on stage. But I'm glad you've all had lunch. I was reading some psychology research before I set off to the US. And it was saying actually the post-lunch session is the best slot because people are well fed. And hopefully you don't see me as food. So thanks for coming. What I want to do is probably talk for about half an hour and leave plenty of time for questions at the end. I want to talk to you about candidate experience, as Marina said. But actually, what I'm here to do is tell you about how hard it is and talk to you about our story. We've got this fantastic brand, we've got this fantastic icon in Richard. And what that does for us is creates a different type of challenge. He sets the bar really high. And it makes it really hard for us to deliver a recruitment experience to live up to the expectation that Richard brings. We do something at our assessment centres in the introduction where we try to tell people about the realities of life at Virgin Media. So we say, you're not likely to bump into Richard at the coffee machine. However, we did this a few weeks ago and he actually walked in, which is a bit embarrassing. But he doesn't often walk in. So Richard is obviously the icon of Virgin as a brand. And it's great to have him on our team. There's another guy that we've got on our team as well who also doesn't really help because it escalates the perception of the consumer brand in the market. It's the greatest athlete on the planet, and I'll let him tell you a little bit more about Virgin Media.
Usain Bolt broke the 100-meter world record in 9.58 seconds. Do you know what 9.58 seconds feels like? It feels like this. And your whole life passing under your feet. Like the entire nation is running into you. Like the overwhelming rush of courage was worth it. It feels like that healthy Jamaican home cooking. Like the boy grew up, but never lost his killer instinct. It feels beautiful, like pure joy. It feels like being a real-life superhero. Like everything in your whole life suddenly making sense. This is what it feels like to be the fastest.
So we've got Usain Bolt out there in the market telling everyone that we're the fastest broadband provider in the UK, which is great. We've got Richard Branson on our team. We're also, according to LinkedIn metrics, which are really accurate, we're the second best place to work in the UK. Second best place, most attractive, sorry. So we create this huge anticipation of what it's like to work at Virgin, and we have to live up to that. And there's just one more thing. I need to tell you the truth. So 2 years ago, I started out as head of talent acquisition, head of resourcing. And the first thing I wanted to do was look through our metrics. We had some brilliant survey metrics in place. We use Net Promoter Score, NPS. Anyone else use NPS surveys to measure candidate experience? Brilliant. So what I was really interested in is just to pour through some of the rejected candidate stats. And I came across one story, or one response from a hairdresser in Manchester called Louise. Now, Louise was, she had no qualifications when she left school. She left school at 16. She was looking for part-time work, and Virgin Media was a good option for her. So we were quite nearby, we had an office nearby. She didn't think she had the relevant skills or experience to be able to apply for the job, but the advert made it sound quite appealing, and she'd heard good things about the brand. So she applied. She was really surprised to find out, actually, that we invited her along to an assessment centre, and she was told it was going to last for 3 hours. So she was a bit nervous, a bit scared about what was going to happen. A 3-hour assessment event. She'd never had an interview before, didn't know what to expect. So she did what most people do and shared that with her friends and family. They rallied around her. They gave her advice on how to interview really well, how to prepare herself. She also went out and bought a new outfit at the weekend. And she made sure that, she had a little boy, and made sure that he was put into childcare on the Monday that she was due to attend the assessment. So she was all ready. She turned up, walked into the reception, and was sent down to the interview room by a sort of rather grumpy, disgruntled receptionist. And the first exercise that Louise had to go through was the interview. So she felt she prepared for it. She'd done all she could. She was ready for it. She went into the interview room, and after about 5 minutes, she started to feel quite comfortable, quite relaxed. And then the interviewer took a phone call. So he walked out of the room and was away for 10 minutes, and then came back and said to Louise, "Look, thanks for coming, Louise. I think I've heard everything I need to hear. I've had a look through your application. I don't think this is going to work out. That's the end of the assessment event for you today," and sent her home. So Louise, a bit embarrassed actually, didn't really know how to react to that. Just calmly, got herself together and walked out. And then went home, and the first thing she did was tell her friends and family about it. And interestingly enough, when we looked at the data, Louise was just one example of a customer. But little did we know at the time as well, her sister was a customer, and so were her parents. And this was the feedback response that Louise wrote. So she was so upset, she expected to be treated better from a Virgin company. We get this a lot. Richard talked earlier about Virgin have, we're a way of life brand. That's the expectation that we put out there in the marketplace. But we really let her down in this situation. And she switched to a competitor, so Sky in the UK are our biggest competitor. I love the fact that I have to explain that. You maybe don't know who Sky are. Maybe some people do. Anyone from Sky here? No? Okay, good. Okay, so this was my reaction. Late one night, looking through these survey responses, and I started to wonder, she said she's going to switch. Did she really do it? And how many more Louises are there out there who are going to go and switch to another provider? So what I decided to do was dig into the data from the survey in a little bit more detail and work with our customer insight team to help me to establish whether or not the candidates that we were rejecting were customers. And interestingly enough, and quite surprisingly, we found that 18% of our rejected candidates were customers. So we looked at the data set and did a match to see whether within a month of their recruitment experience and them writing a survey response telling us that they were going to switch, that they actually did. So 18% of the rejected candidates were customers. Quite a scary number. And then we looked at our rejected candidate NPS score. So if you think about maybe 2/3 of this room would be rejected candidates who would give us a score between 0 and 6. So they were detractors. based on the experience that we gave them through recruitment, they were unhappy. So it started getting me thinking about, actually, we get 150,000, 160,000 last year applications for jobs. Part of my role, yes, is to find the best talent for the business, but actually there's a much greater responsibility, and it's to actually look after the people who we reject. They could be customers. And more than anything, actually, the Louise example was just something that I wouldn't be proud of. I didn't want that to be my friends or family, my relatives. I thought we shouldn't be, we're not living up to the Virgin brand by giving that type of experience. So the equation to work it out is really simple, as you can see. What we do is take our rejected candidate application numbers, 123,000. We worked out from the sample size that 6% of Louises out there who we could prove actually did switch. 6% of 123,000, anyone? 7,500, there or thereabouts. So we take the 7,500. The other thing that we know in our business, we're a subscription business, so we know on an average month, we would take £50 worth of revenue. It's about $60. I'm losing track of the exchange rate these days, but it's about $60. And we simply multiply that 7,500 by £50 by 12 months, and we get 4.4 million. So yeah, that was my reaction. And actually thought, this is a big can of worms. I've been tasked with doing more recruitment with half the size of team that we had the previous year and do it faster. That was the challenge. And what I'd actually discovered was there was a big can of worms there. That nobody was really pointing a gun to my head and saying, Graeme, sort out candidate experience. It was just something that I thought, we're underinvested in as a team. We're not providing a brilliant experience to candidates. We're being asked to do more and asked to do it faster. So I was in a bit of a dilemma as to what to do about it. The team that we had in place at the time felt a bit devalued. We were perceived as a transactional department. I don't know if anyone else has sort of gone through that experience, but it's quite tough, when hiring managers see your team as just order takers. So that was the situation we were in. And I wanted to give the team a sense of purpose and to make them understand that actually the impact of what we do and how we can influence the business to provide a better experience is something that we can all be proud of. And drawing inspiration from something Richard says quite often is actually all we want to do is turn up for work and do something that we're proud of. And this was an opportunity that I saw. So I decided to do something about it. What I tend to do in these situations is talk to my dad. And he said to me, son, I think what you need to do is summon your inner Braveheart. So, okay, Dad, I'll do that. So I thought, right, confidently, I'm going to go and stroll into the CFO's office and open up this big can of worms and ask him to invest in my team. So I thought that's going to be, really straightforward, be a great experience. How I describe this session is what we call in the UK, what we refer to as the hairdryer treatment, which I don't know if anyone's familiar with that phrase. It sounds like a great experience. Go in and meet your CFO and maybe have a nice blow dry. That wasn't the case. The hairdryer treatment is when someone shouts at you so loud that your hair stands back, a bit like this. So let me introduce you to Robert, our CFO. So, session with Robert, actually, I think maybe I just caught him in a bad mood. I went to explain to him, look, Robert, I think we need some investment. I want to bring the recruitment team in-house. I want to get a sourcing team in place. I think candidate experience is a great business case. Actually, we need to invest. We're not being respectful of people. We're not living up to our brand values. And the first thing Robert did was to just say to me, yeah, that sounds really interesting, Graeme, but I don't believe the numbers. So he asked me to work with his team to go off, and he wanted them to actually investigate and see if there was anything in this. Just immediately, recruitment person in my office talking about numbers, mustn't know what he's talking about. Let's send him off. So the finance team did have a look at it. They went back to Robert and said, actually, yeah, I think there's something in this. And in fact, what we're looking at is just how many customers we can see that have directly switched. We don't know the impact of have their friends and family switched, have they, has word of mouth spread. So that number, you could times that by 3 or 4. So I got into quite an interesting discussion. So the second session that I had with Robert went a bit like this. So he said, okay, Graeme, this candidate experience stuff, why have you let it get to this stage? You should have done something about this. Okay. Get on with it. In fact, I want this done fast. I want this done fast. Which was great. So I thought that's got to be the hard part out of the way. CFO's on board. What I need to do is go and get the marketing team on board. We need to sprinkle some Virgin Magic across the experience. That's what we need. So introduce you to Keris Bright, our Chief Marketing Officer, fantastic ambassador for our brand. She actually does bump into Richard Branson at the coffee machine quite often. And she's the inspiration behind the Usain Bolt advert that I displayed earlier on. So the session with Keris was also interesting. Explained the problem to Keris about the commercial impact, and it went a bit like this. So she said, "Okay, Graeme, no problem. What is it you want? Do you want me to give you some content with Richard Branson in it? That's fine. I can do that. Do you want us to get Usain Bolt involved in recruitment? We can do that. We're going to go and do a film shoot with him in Jamaica next month. Not a problem." At the time, we were also doing some work with Paloma Faith. I don't know if anyone knows Paloma Faith in the US. I don't know if she's made it out here yet. Quite big in the UK. And she said, yeah, we could probably throw in some stuff with Paloma Faith as well. And I was sort of sitting there thinking, brilliant. This is just what I wanted. Fantastic. And then came the but. So the but was, Graeme, I'm not going to do any of that for you unless you go off and sort out this pig of an experience that we're providing. She said, I'm not going to be the one who comes along and puts lipstick on this service. You need to go out there and you need to talk to everyone in the business that's providing this bad experience. You need to retrain them. You need to improve the standards of our hiring managers before I'll do anything for you. Okay, so we went away as a team and decided, right, what we're going to do about this. We came up with what we referred to as the gold standard interviewing program. And we didn't want this to be beating people over the head with a stick. We wanted to incentivize people, to inspire people to want to deliver an interview experience that was at the standard that we would expect. We wanted to accredit people. And to do this, we got some of our senior leaders involved, so our sales directors, our exec director of business sales got involved. And they recorded videos for us about how they wouldn't want their friends and family to be treated in the way that Louise was. One of our directors actually spoke about his son's experience with some of the investment banks in London. And so he had some quite personal, emotional stories to tell to actually get the business on board. And what also helped was in our sales teams, we started to put incentives in place. So we have sales awards at the end of the year, and they're usually based on biggest commission, biggest account that we've landed. Our sales director actually agreed to put in there who's given the best candidate experience, which I thought was fantastic. And in fact, it's been so good, it's more than we ever expected it would. So I went away from the session with Keris and thought, yeah, okay, we'll try. We've got 500-600 managers in the business to try and get up to a certain standard before we can get some help from the marketing team. I didn't actually think it was going to be that realistic, and I was amazed by the results. And there's one guy who I use as an example of just how successful it's been, and this is Les. So Les is a field sales guy, so he knocks on doors for a living. He's got the hardest job in our business to try and convert residential customers to Virgin Media. Now, the reason he's called Les the Butcher is his previous job before he became field sales manager was a butcher. And fantastic guy. He could sell anything, sell ice to the Eskimos, no problem. Now with Les, if he was here today, he'd probably admit, though, he was probably one of the worst when it came to interviewing. The experience Les used to give people was pretty much interview them anywhere, get them to do the most crazy things. Sell me a pen was his favorite line. This is the type of place you'd interview people in. He'd give them 5 minutes. He was probably one of the examples of people like Louise would encounter people like Les. So we thought we're going to target Les and we're going to make him an ambassador for this program. And the results have been amazing. So it's been in place for about 6 months now. And within the first month, we had some examples that we could track. So people who Les had interviewed, who'd gone away from the interview, and they'd been rejected. But he'd done it in such a way that he had explained to them why they weren't quite right for the role. He'd given them some advice on, if they were serious about a career in field sales, what they needed to do. He offered to do some follow-up sessions with them if they wanted it. And then he also saw the opportunity to talk about the benefits of Virgin Media products and services. So not only did we have people walking away from the interview thinking, okay, I totally understand and I totally agree with the decision, but they also went away thinking, actually, I'm probably going to go and look into Virgin Media products and services because Les was so passionate about that, and I need to go and check to see whether I can get better value than Sky would give me. And Les is just one example of a number. So we've put 450 hiring managers through this program, and this has been the result. So our net promoter score for rejected candidates, specifically in the sales area, was the worst in the business, -57. So I flash up the -29 stat. This is one that I've never shared before because we're so embarrassed to share it. And it's actually turned around to, at the end of September, +11. So in NPS terms, we were aspiring just to get it to a 0. So to get +11, we're absolutely amazed by that. So we've done what Keris asked. We've gone off and made sure that we sorted out this pig of an experience that we were providing. And we've created what we describe internally as a bit of a movement around candidate experience. And why I describe it as that is my boss, our chief HR officer, our chief people officer, had the opportunity to stand up in a room similar to this in Manchester in front of 300 of our leaders. And it was the leadership forum at the start of the year where we lay out our strategy. We talk about all the difference that HR is going to make, the impact that we're going to have over the next 1 to 2 years. And Maurice had 30 minutes to talk about everything in HR, from engagement through to reward. He spent 25 minutes of his 30-minute slot talking about candidate experience. He wagged his finger at people, told people to pull their socks up, talked about the impact that it was going to have on our business, talked about the commercial impact. And the results have been amazing. I mean, teams are getting in touch with us now to understand what's the rejected candidate NPS for my business area, how can we improve it? And they're getting really competitive, which is great. So we've created a movement. We also worked in the background with our friends at PH Creative. So I don't know if anyone was in Dave's session yesterday. Anyone? Yeah, a few people down here. So we worked, I met Dave actually, I've got LinkedIn to thank for this. So it was 2014 Talent Connect in London. So Dave puts up a big image of Steven Gerrard, who's a footballer, soccer player for Liverpool. So I thought I've got to go and talk to Dave. But actually the conversation got a little bit deeper than just football. So we talked about this problem that we had, talked about how we were trying to get our marketing team on board, and actually we need some external expertise to help change the mindset internally. And what we wanted to do is make sure that we looked after people who weren't going to get a job with us. So we knew you got a 50 to 1 chance of getting a job at Virgin Media. I was chatting to Dave about my role as pretty much the head of rejection, actually, not recruitment. I really care about the 125, it'll be 150,000 people that we say no to, that we say no to them in the right way, and that if they are a customer, they stay a customer. If they're not, they probably want to consider becoming one. But actually, aside from that we're just helping support them and doing something that all Virgin brands aspire to do, and just help make a difference in their lives and support them to find a job. That's the mission that we came up with. And there's my amazing team in a workshop with Dave. So one of the first things we did was, let's map out the experience. Let's do persona mapping. Anyone done this? Show of hands, anyone? Persona maps? Okay, cool. 1 or 2, not many. I thought there'd be more, a few. Okay, so this is where we started. So we wanted to understand what is going to help people? How can we create a digital experience that will help people? And how will that be different for different types of people in the labor market? So we recruit field engineers, we recruit sales teams, we recruit people in contact centers. We do 2,000 people at the kind of entry level, but they all want different things. They all need different types of support. So how do we nurture them? How do we support them? And how do we become a magnet to attract people to us based on the advice and the content that we share with them? So that's where we started out. And we've come up with some good things. One of the examples of one of the personas that we looked at was entry level. This is a great concept called cut the quack. So as part of the cultural fit for Virgin Media, the language that you use is really important. We like people to talk honestly. We don't like jargon. We don't like buzzwords. So we came up with this concept, or Dave's team did, called Cut the Quack, where we'll redact anything on your CV that we think wouldn't really fit in with us culturally. It's to have a bit of fun. It's also to help people at entry level to prepare a CV. So we'll push this content out to them. It's just one example. What's also really important to us is NPS, rejected NPS. We get that at the end of each month. We review it. But we're not in real time actually taking any action. So one of the really powerful things that we've done is focus on the metrics. We want to understand how people feel the moment before they turn up for an assessment center and then when they leave. And did we provide them with an experience that we're proud of? And then actually there's some interesting things we can start to do here. So when we're running assessment events in Manchester or in the northeast of the country or in London, we can compare who's giving the best experience. And we can dig into that and give feedback to managers and get really specific about how we improve the candidate experience geographically. So the measurement's really important. And we've also got a bit of Virgin magic. So we did actually get the film shoot with Keris. So we went back to her and said, can we go to Jamaica and do the film shoot with Usain Bolt? So some nice touches that you'd expect to get from a Virgin brand, we've actually got now. So Usain will pop up and wish people good luck. We're also recorded some clips of him giving advice on how to get prepared, how to do your best. So some inspirational content.
Graeme came to me with the idea that he was able to show me that by improving our processes dealing with job applicants, we could substantially improve our potential net promoter score for our customers and potential customers.
We know that we have 160,000 applicants every year. We know that people have a 1 in 50 chance of getting a job. I mean, I thought about the fact that they might tell 3 or 4 friends and family that they're going for the interview, but I never managed to think that we might lose customers and a direct impact on someone having a bad interview experience with us. The real killer stat was when Graeme was able to prove that we have lost 7,500 potential customers and lost a potential £4.4 million in revenue. Just a phenomenal statistic that really made us all sit up and take notice of what we say.
As a financial director, we value customers on their net present value. So it's very important that all those people have a good experience. By improving the processes and investing about £100,000, Graeme was able to substantially improve the net promoter score, and that's paid back many, many times. It's not just about the financial returns for Virgin Media, but it's also about our reputation with all of those applicants and obviously all the people they speak to as well.
There's a real buzz around the people team at Virgin Media, knowing that we're doing something quite groundbreaking, knowing that we're potentially impacting the customer experience and saving customers and potentially attracting new customers.
Thanks. So when I first saw that, I got goosebumps. That's our CFO talking about the commercial impact of recruitment. He didn't talk about the fact that he gave me the hairdryer treatment, but I'll let him off for that. So yeah, we created a buzz around the business. There's also something which Robert is also quite interested in, as we've got this huge database of candidates. As he quite rightly says, it's not just about the financial returns, it's about the experience. But there's something maybe quite controversial that we're looking into now, which you might disagree with. We'll see. But when you look at the return on trying to convert a customer through the normal marketing channels, through a retail store, through a telesales contact center, we calculate that to be about $500 to acquire a customer that will generate a return of about $2,000 in revenue annually. It's quite expensive to acquire customers. If we think of that in candidate experience terms, the amount we've invested, actually, we've done some training internally, we've lifted the standard up, we've helped educate people, and we've invested a bit in content marketing and candidate experience to provide a great digital experience. But if we then acquire customers through that route, then it's 10 times cheaper than the normal sales channels. So I'm having some quite interesting conversations with our sales teams who are interested in what more could we do with candidate experience to drive revenue in the business. So we've gone from this, within 2 years, this perception of our team as we don't really add value, there's not much of a commercial impact to what we do, to our CFO now on boards and our sales teams engaged, and we're looking at how can we make the experience amazing, and how can we look at this as a potential source of revenue and do something about it. So the greatest athlete on the planet, in my view, Muhammad Ali, says, the service you do for others is the rent you pay for your room here on earth. And I love that quote, because that reminds us of the fact that we are there to support people, there to help them find a job. Or, as the great philosopher Les says, hey, we should all be behind this, It's well important to our business in the future and stuff. Which, translated into English, is candidate experience is a strategically important business imperative, not only to protect against customer churn, but more importantly, to add value back to society and those most in need of help. Thanks for listening. I think we've got maybe 5-10 minutes for some questions as well, which would be great. So there's some mics in the aisles there, I think. So. Or I think someone's going to run around with a mic.
Hi. Hello. My name's
Hi.
Jessica. I work
Hi,
for
Jessica.
a company called Intralocks. I'd love to learn or hear a little bit more about the gold standard you spoke to. In saying that it was a little bit more of a philosophy than very rigid things. Could you elaborate on what that was for y'all? Yeah, cool. So we worked with our training design team. They looked at how can we get people to engage emotionally with recruitment. So we didn't put them through a program of the actual skill of recruitment. It was more about how to be respectful, how to have a two-way conversation, how to listen effectively, which sounds like really basic, fundamental stuff, but for some of our sales teams, it was kind of, it was needed. And we also got people who went through the course in advance to do some research on our employer brand. We gave them access to some of our survey comments and said, you guys are working so hard to acquire customers, yet we're kind of losing them at this end because of the experience you provide. How do you feel about that? How would you feel if your commission was based on the experience you gave? And that made them kind of, oh, okay, I need to take that seriously.
So through some brilliant training design internally, and just getting people to be more respectful was the sort of key to it, really.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay. So obviously you have a lot of people who don't make it to the actual interview.
Yeah.
So we're talking about well over 100,000+.
Yeah.
How do you handle a response? Was there anything unique outside of your generic, you haven't been selected situation? I mean, what are you doing to turn those people?
Yeah, so it depends on what stage they are in the process. So as an absolute minimum, I mean, what we didn't do beforehand was give everyone feedback. That was one of the themes that came out of our survey. So everybody gets a feedback report, in depth. So that's the most basic thing that you'll get if you're just at the first stage. If you then get to the face-to-face...
You mean, sorry, you get the feedback if you interview, you're saying?
Yep, so the first stage, so beyond the online application. If it's just the online application stage, we'll give people feedback on why they didn't meet the criteria. But the amount of information we give people is kind of relative to the effort that they put in. And sort of at the other extreme, where people have been through a face-to-face interview, we'll provide them with a detailed report. We'll explain to them what other opportunities we might have in the future. We'll also talk to them about these were the things that we thought you needed to work on, and here's some content. Here's a book to read, a blog, some video content, things that might help you to try and coach them to be better in the future.
Okay, so you did have maybe some standardized responses based on why they didn't meet the qualifications?
Yes, yeah, the very, very, very first stage, yeah. Okay.
And I guess I would just want to know how specific, because obviously we're talking about 100,000+ people.
Yeah.
If they weren't selected at all for interview, I mean, help me understand an idea of how you differentiated and gave them more specifics, other than you just didn't have the degree, you didn't have the years of experience.
Yeah. So they'll fill in, it's based on the information they put online. We can get a profile of whether they'd be a cultural fit or not. We can understand where their talent and motivation is. So it's the assessment tool that they fill in kind of spits out for us quite a bespoke piece of feedback.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks. Anyone else? Oh, yeah, cool.
Yes. I have a question regarding the number, because I have someone in my chain of command with the air blower treatment, so that's why I shave. In our industry, and I work in the telecom industry as well,
cool.
Churn is a natural factor. It's something that, and I was just wondering, that 6% that you saw from those bad candidate experience, how can you segregate that and say it was actually because of the bad candidate experience rather than the natural 6% that you see anyways in the industry?
Good question. So our finance team, that was something Robert picked up on straight away. So would people have just disconnected anyway? Were they going to move address anyway? So our customer insight team actually looked at it, and we stripped out the people who had either been in touch with us previously. So we looked at it within a month period. People that we knew were going to disconnect, they were coming up to the end of their contract, versus people who actually churned as a direct result. So, it's as accurate as we can get it. We did have a bit of debate, is 6% too low, is it too high? There's been some other research done to say actually it's maybe more like 8-10%. PepsiCo study's an interesting one. And then we got into a bit of a debate with finance about, well, could you times that number by 2 or 3 because of the word of mouth impact? So it's not an exact science. It's an attempt to put a dollar sign on a problem. We think it's a conservative attempt based on the data set that we've got.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Hi, Antonio Bizalaki, TA Leadership at HomeWay.
Hi.
Another consumer brand. I'm super passionate about candidate experience.
Cool.
How do you guys collect the NPS score? Is it survey results that you guys do yourselves, or you use a third party?
It's third party, so it's a company called eDigital.
Okay. Awesome.
Good question. Easy one. Anyone else?
Yeah, real quick. Hi, over here.
Hi.
My name is John. Good stuff. Wanted to ask if you had any advice for B2B companies that would like to create an ROI around their candidate experience?
Yeah, I mean, the potential for this, I think, is huge. So I was talking to a good friend of mine, Nathan Stanley, who works for Microsoft. If there's any Microsoft guys here. Nathan was talking to me about concerned about potentially at the sort of exec level, the impact of getting the experience wrong there for a CIO who could be making decisions about spend worth, multi-million-dollar spend, could be even worse. So our numbers are based on residential customers, the £50, £50 a month value. B2B, I think, is such a huge opportunity or such a big risk for businesses. So I don't know if that answers your question, but I know Microsoft are kind of looking at that sort of thing, and we need to look at that as well, actually.
Right. No, that was great. Thank you.
Thanks.
Hi, Graeme. My name is Jeannie.
Hi, Jeannie.
Quick question for you regarding when people come to the in-person interview stage.
Yep.
Is that the hiring manager who's providing the feedback? And did you have any concerns around them perhaps not providing appropriate legal feedback?
Yes,
and how did you address that?
Yeah, we did, yeah. So two things. So it used to be either the hiring manager or nobody, but now it's all centralized by a team of recruitment experts who, some of them have got like counseling qualifications, and they're really good at positioning feedback on the phone. So that's all done. And we don't actually make any offers. So we get the results in from assessment centers, and we don't make any offers unless everybody's been given feedback or we've received that from the event.
Got it. Thank you
So
so much.
we've put a lot more governance in around that.
Thank you.
That's a good question.
Quick question.
Hey.
Hi, Lindsay. I work for an investment advisor. So we are recruiting purposefully, not clients.
Yeah.
So how do you recommend putting a dollar value on an ROI if we are not losing a client base? We have a very high minimum for an account balance, and I'm recruiting newly graduated 22-year-olds who wouldn't be a client for years.
I see what you mean. Okay, yeah. I guess thinking about, so I was talking to Jaguar Land Rover in the UK, car manufacturer, and they are really concerned about, they bring apprentices and graduates in, and they're really concerned about making sure that they provide a good experience for them, not because they can afford a Jaguar or a Land Rover, but because their parents may be customers. Mm-hmm. So it's more about the social impact of people in their network, the word of mouth impact. So it's tougher to calculate because it's more of an indirect measure, but I think it is possible through understanding kind of who those individuals are and who those people are around them who could influence decisions.
Okay, and then second part to my question is...
Two questions.
It is, yes, it is a firm mandate not to provide feedback on the recruiting process or why we did or did not move forward with your candidacy.
Okay.
So in looking at that, do you have recommendations on how to improve rejected candidates' lives without the feedback?
Why do you not give them feedback?
Great question.
Okay.
I have asked plenty of times. I think they're more concerned about the consistency of it and the ramifications if someone turned it around and sued us for employment lawsuits.
I think the problem, the conversation I would have is just, it's almost worse to say nothing. They've invested time and effort into something that's a really emotional experience.
Absolutely.
And to just say, thanks for all that time and effort you've put in, but we don't tell you why you've been rejected. But I just think you look at that.
It's tough.
It is tough, yeah. Okay, I'm getting the signal, so thanks, guys. Enjoy the next session.